Most men think they can spot a woman's past, but the truth will shock you. What you're about to hear will change how you see female behavior forever. Don't judge, understand. Watch till the very end, because the last point will completely flip your perspective. Comment where you are watching from, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful truths from Jessica O'Pear. When you meet a woman who seems emotionally detached, distant, or oddly calm about relationships, it's easy to label her as cold or uninterested. But what if I told you that detachment is often not a flaw? It's a form of self-protection. You see, every time a person invests emotionally and gets hurt, the mind learns. It starts to associate intimacy with loss, trust with disappointment, and affection with pain. Over time, the emotional system adapts. It builds invisible walls, layers of defense meant to prevent vulnerability from turning into suffering again. So when a woman has experienced several intimate connections without lasting emotional security, she unconsciously begins to disconnect her heart from the act itself. At first, this disconnection might feel like power, freedom even. Society often tells women that being carefree and unattached makes them strong, but underneath that surface lies fatigue. The kind that comes from giving parts of yourself repeatedly without truly being seen or understood. And when that happens enough times, something inside her begins to shut down emotionally. She learns to perform closeness rather than feel it. She knows how to be affectionate, to flirt, to charm, but not necessarily how to surrender emotionally. In psychology, this pattern is known as emotional desensitization. It's the mind's way of saying, "You felt too much pain here, so let's stop feeling altogether." It doesn't mean she's heartless. It means she's learned to survive in a world that often rewards detachment more than depth. And here's where most men misunderstand women. They think emotional distance equals disinterest, but often it's a quiet signal of emotional exhaustion. She's been here before, she's heard the promises, felt the chemistry, and watched it fade. So she no longer invests fully until she sees something different, something safe. This emotional disconnect can appear subtle. You'll notice it in the way she deflects deep questions or laughs when the conversation turns serious. You'll sense it when she changes the topic after you mention love, or when she uses humor to mask vulnerability. It's not because she doesn't care. It's because caring deeply has cost her before. Her emotions have been weaponized, misused, or ignored. So she wears a kind of emotional armor that keeps her protected while still allowing her to appear open enough to connect. It's a delicate balance between letting people in and keeping herself safe. Now, let's go deeper. Emotional intimacy is like a muscle. It strengthens with consistent, meaningful connection and weakens when overused without rest or purpose. When a woman has given emotionally to multiple people who didn't value that depth, her emotional muscle tires out. She starts to ration her energy. She begins to see affection as a transaction rather than a bond. In her mind, connection becomes temporary and feelings become optional. She tells herself that it's better to enjoy the moment than to believe in something lasting. This mindset might seem confident from the outside, but inside it's often rooted in fear, the fear of being vulnerable again. You can also see this in her body language. She may maintain strong eye contact, project confidence, and use her charm effortlessly. But if you look closely, there's restraint in her touch, hesitation in her tone, or even an emotional pause before she answers questions about love. Her heart has been trained to stay alert. It's not that she doesn't want love. It's that she's unsure if love can still be trusted. From a philosophical point of view, emotional detachment reflects a loss of innocence. It's what happens when the idealism of love collides with the realism of experience. She has learned that connection doesn't always mean commitment, and vulnerability doesn't always bring safety. That realization forces her to redefine what intimacy means. For her, it may no longer be about emotional merging. It might be about control, independence, or self-preservation. This is why, when you meet such a woman, your role isn't to judge or label her based on her emotional availability. Your role is to understand what shaped that emotional reality. Every wall she built was once a wound. Every bit of distance was once closeness that went unreciprocated. When you understand this, you stop asking, "What's wrong with her?" and start asking, "What happened to her?" That shift in perspective is what separates emotional maturity from mere curiosity. But here's the paradox. Emotional detachment, while meant to protect, also isolates. The very thing she uses to keep pain away also keeps love out. And sooner or later, every guarded heart faces that truth. She may appear strong, but deep down, there's still a longing, a quiet desire to be understood without being judged, to be touched emotionally, not just physically. The woman who seems distant often craves connection the most, but she's terrified that it will end the same way it did before. So, what does this mean for you? It means that when you encounter emotional distance, don't chase it with pressure or force. Meet it with patience. When she seems withdrawn, don't pull away, stay consistent. Show her that depth still exists, that love can be both strong and safe. Because the only thing that heals emotional detachment is emotional safety. And safety is built not through grand gestures, but through steady presence. At the end of the day, every emotionally guarded woman carries two stories, the one she tells the world and the one she hides inside. The first is confident, witty, and composed. The second is fragile, yearning, and hopeful. The difference between the man who sees her surface and the man who truly understands her is empathy, the ability to see through the layers, to recognize that distance is not rejection but protection. So, before you judge a woman for seeming emotionally detached, pause and look closer. The wall she built wasn't designed to keep you out. It was built to protect what's left of her heart. And if you can see beyond it, if you can make her feel safe enough to let it fall, you won't just reach her, you'll help her rediscover herself. Because sometimes the deepest love isn't about passion, it's about patience. And the strongest connection isn't found in the moment you touch her body, but in the moment she trusts you with her heart again. When we talk about intimacy, most people think of the physical act itself, the chemistry, the attraction, the moment. But the truth is, intimacy isn't just about what happens between two bodies. It's about the meaning attached to it, the emotional value it carries. For some women, especially those who have had multiple intimate experiences, that meaning begins to change. It's not necessarily out of choice. It's the result of conditioning, of repeated exposure to connection without commitment, affection without depth, and pleasure without purpose. In the beginning, intimacy feels sacred, something private, something that bonds two people on a deeper level. But when that experience is repeated, often in emotionally shallow situations, it starts to lose its emotional weight. What once felt like connection starts to feel like routine. What once was vulnerability becomes performance. And when that happens, intimacy no longer becomes an exchange of emotions. It becomes an act of expression, sometimes even of validation. Psychologically speaking, this is called emotional habituation. The more frequently a person engages in an experience without emotional reinforcement, the less emotional response they have toward it. It's like hearing your favorite song too many times. At first, it moves you. After a while, you barely notice it's playing. The same happens with intimacy when it's disconnected from emotion. The woman may still seek it, still participate in it, but it's not about closeness anymore. It's about the feeling of being wanted, seen, or momentarily significant. And this is where many men misinterpret things. They see her confidence, her openness about her body, her comfort with physical closeness, and they assume it's just modern empowerment. But often, beneath that confidence lies a deeper emotional story. Because when someone learns to treat intimacy as something casual or transactional, it's usually not empowerment, it's emotional adaptation. It's her way of controlling the one area of life that once made her feel powerless. Let's be honest. Society has taught both men and women to confuse liberation with detachment. We call it freedom when someone feels nothing, when they can move from one person to another without emotional consequence. But true freedom doesn't come from numbing your emotions. It comes from understanding them. A woman who treats intimacy casually might seem strong, but sometimes that strength is built on the ruins of trust. She has learned that emotional investment brings pain, so she focuses only on the part she can control, the physical. This shift also affects how she views relationships. Instead of seeing intimacy as a bridge to connection, she sees it as a tool, something that can be used to maintain attention, to test compatibility, or even to fill emotional emptiness. It's not manipulation in the malicious sense. It's survival. It's the human instinct to find significance, even if only for a fleeting moment. Because deep down, every woman, no matter how independent, confident, or detached she appears, still craves to be understood and valued beyond the surface. Philosophically, intimacy was never meant to be an isolated act. It was designed as a form of emotional communication, a language of trust, surrender, and shared vulnerability. But in a culture that glorifies instant gratification, that language has become fragmented. Many people now speak it without understanding what it means. For a woman who has been through multiple shallow experiences, it's as if she's been taught to speak the language of closeness, but has forgotten the emotion behind the words. You might notice it in how she talks about relationships, not with hope, but with cynicism. She may say things like love doesn't last, or everyone eventually leaves. These aren't just statements. They're emotional defenses. They tell you that she once believed in love and was disappointed enough times to stop believing. Her approach to intimacy then becomes both an escape and a shield, something that lets her feel alive while keeping her heart at a safe distance. Now, this doesn't mean she's broken or unworthy of love. Far from it. It means she's human. She has adapted to her emotional reality the best way she knows how, and that's the part many men overlook. Instead of labeling her as experienced or easy, it's far wiser to ask what shaped her perspective. Every woman's relationship with intimacy tells a story about trust, pain, identity, and resilience. When you understand that, you stop seeing her choices as flaws and start seeing them as reflections of her journey. If you pay close attention, you'll also notice that women who have become emotionally detached from intimacy often crave deeper connection more than anyone else. They might say they don't want commitment, but their actions betray a longing for stability. They might act carefree, but their eyes reveal a quiet exhaustion. What they truly want is not another partner, but peace. The peace that comes when intimacy means something again. So, if you meet a woman who seems comfortable with casual intimacy, don't rush to assumptions. Instead, offer something rare: authenticity. Because authenticity is magnetic to those who've been disillusioned. It cuts through the noise, the games, the masks. It reminds her that connection can still be real. It doesn't mean you need to save her. It means you need to be steady enough not to contribute to her disillusionment. In the end, her attitude toward intimacy is not just about sex. It's about her relationship with herself. When a woman truly values herself, intimacy becomes sacred again. But when she's been taught that value comes from being desired, she gives her body easily because she's still searching for her worth. And until that worth is reclaimed internally, the cycle continues. So the next time you find yourself with a woman who seems emotionally distant or detached, pause before you judge. Remember that what looks like indifference is often the scar tissue of a heart that's been stretched too thin. Approach with awareness, with respect, with understanding. Because one genuine connection, one act of patience, one moment of honesty, that can remind her what intimacy was always meant to be. Not an exchange of pleasure, but a meeting of souls. And maybe that's the real power of intimacy. Not in the act itself, but in the courage it takes to feel again after you've been taught not to. There's a certain energy you feel when you meet someone, something you can't quite explain, but you sense it immediately. It's in her presence, her tone, her confidence, and even in her silence. When a woman has been through many emotional or physical experiences, that energy often carries the imprint of her past. You can sense it, not because she tells you, but because her entire demeanor communicates a story her words never could. Her boundaries, her comfort with attention, her rhythm in conversation, they all reveal how she's learned to navigate male energy over time. A woman who's been with many men often develops what I call emotional duality. On one hand, she's open, magnetic, even fearless in how she engages. She knows what to say, how to hold eye contact, how to make you feel wanted. She's confident, almost too confident, in her ability to attract. But on the other hand, she's guarded. There's a silent calculation behind her warmth, a subconscious awareness of what she's willing to give and what she'll never risk again. She's not naive anymore. And you can feel that maturity. It's not bitterness, it's calibration. She knows where to draw the invisible line that protects her peace. You'll notice it in how she handles boundaries. Early in life, many women give too much of themselves too easily, emotionally, physically, or energetically. But when that generosity is met with inconsistency or betrayal, she learns to ration it. She no longer allows people full access. Instead, she gives just enough to keep a connection alive, but not enough to make herself vulnerable. She becomes an expert at balance, open enough to be desirable, closed enough to stay safe. That's what many men mistake for confidence. But it's actually strategy. It's the product of experience, of learning where love ends and where self-preservation begins. And this is why her energy can feel so powerful yet unreachable at the same time. You might feel drawn to her, but unable to fully connect. Her charm pulls you in, but something in her energy holds you at arm's length. It's not personal, it's emotional memory. The body remembers pain even when the mind tries to forget. From a psychological perspective, this guarded energy often stems from what's called adaptive detachment, a learned response to emotional inconsistency. When a person has repeatedly experienced love that comes and goes, attention that excites and disappears, their nervous system adjusts. It learns to stay half engaged, enough to function socially and romantically, but never fully surrendered. So when she laughs, when she flirts, when she touches your arm or locks eyes with you, there's a part of her that's still observing, still protecting, still keeping score. And yet, beneath that composure, there's always a quiet desire for something genuine. Because no matter how independent or emotionally self-sufficient a woman becomes, there's still a human longing for trust, to finally exhale in someone's presence and not have to perform. But to reach that place with her, you have to understand what her energy is telling you. Her independence doesn't mean she doesn't need connection. It means she's learned not to depend on it. Her comfort with male attention doesn't mean she's promiscuous. It means she's familiar with it, perhaps too familiar. She's learned how to manage it without being consumed by it. If you pay attention, you'll see that her body language often tells the truth her words conceal. When she crosses her arms slightly during deep moments, when her smile falters for half a second during a compliment, when she shifts topics right before vulnerability creeps in, those are all traces of her protective instincts. She's not avoiding you. She's managing the risk of being seen too deeply, because being seen fully means being judged, and she's been judged enough already, by men, by society, and sometimes by herself. There's also a spiritual dimension to this kind of energy. Every interaction we have leaves an imprint. When a woman shares herself, emotionally or physically, she doesn't just exchange pleasure, she exchanges energy. The more partners she's had, the more energetic imprints she carries. Some of them empower her, others weigh her down. And if she hasn't healed from those experiences, her energy can become fragmented, pieces of herself scattered across old connections, making it harder to feel whole in the present. That's why some women seem restless, always chasing new experiences, new thrills, new faces. They're not seeking love. They're trying to reclaim the parts of themselves they left behind. It's crucial, though, to understand this from a place of compassion, not criticism. The goal isn't to judge her journey, but to recognize the emotional physics of human experience. Every choice, every heartbreak, every encounter teaches her something about herself. Some lessons harden her, others humble her. And when you meet her now, confident, self-aware, perhaps a little mysterious, you're meeting the sum of all those experiences. Her energy carries both the wounds and the wisdom of her past. This is why connection with such a woman requires emotional intelligence. You can't approach her with surface-level intentions or game, playing. She's seen it all before. What will move her isn't charm or attention, it's presence. It's when you listen more than you speak, when you notice the pauses in her words, when you give her space to unfold without pressure. That's what earns her trust. Because she's not looking for someone to excite her anymore. She's looking for someone who feels safe enough to let her be real again. So when you sense that duality in her, the confidence and the caution, the openness and the distance, don't try to fix it. Don't try to prove yourself through words or promises. Just show her through consistency that not every connection ends in disappointment. That's how her energy begins to soften again. That's how the walls come down. Because the truth is, her boundaries aren't there to keep love out. They're there to see who cares enough to climb over them with patience. And when you do, you'll discover something remarkable. Beneath that layered, complex energy is a woman who feels deeply, who loves fiercely, and who, despite everything, still believes in connection, even if she no longer admits it out loud. Because no matter how strong or guarded she appears, the right kind of presence can still touch the part of her that remembers what it felt like to trust. And that, more than anything, is what she's been waiting for.